Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Compass Point. We continue to find ourselves in the time of year I am calling growing season, a time that invites us to reflect how we can grow spiritually and abundantly, just as so many other things are growing in the world around us right now. As we reflect on the fruit of the Spirit for a number of weeks, we are going to explore how we too can grow in every way that God wants us to. We began last week by focusing on the first fruit, the fruit of love, and this coming Sunday at 10 o'clock, we are going to explore the second fruit of the Spirit, the fruit of joy. To set that up, I want you to picture a scene in your minds. It's a scene that is found in the Old Testament book of Nehemiah. Picture in your minds a huge gathering of people in the city of Jerusalem. Men, women, and children there in an open square as the priest Ezra reads to them from the Law of Moses. That's what we find in Nehemiah chapter 8. The Law of Moses is probably another way of referring to the first 5 books of the Bible. Hour after hour go by as Ezra reads, beginning at daybreak till noon, reading and witnessing also from an elevated platform that was constructed just for this occasion, how moved the people were by the words of God that he read to them. Nehemiah 8 tells us that the people had an incredible sense of God's awesomeness, his majesty, as they bowed down in worship with their faces to the ground. But they also did something else. They cried. They were weeping as Ezra read the book of the Law of Moses to them. Now, why would they have done that? Well, no doubt it had something to do with the fact that these people had just returned from 70 years of exile in Babylon. They were probably struck with a sense of God's awesomeness and majesty, so much so that they were also brought to an awareness of their own sin and guilt, which is the very thing that necessitated their exile. And so they were humbled, they were broken, they were repenting. And this is where that incredible verse in Nehemiah 8 is such a good verse for us to think of when we are thinking about joy. Ezra, recognizing that the people were all weeping, told them to stop weeping. Do not grieve. It's a sacred day of worship to the Lord, he says. And then he goes on to say, do not mourn or weep, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. We're going to be reflecting further on joy this coming Sunday, but I think that is such an incredible statement. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Now, there's 2 ways of understanding that phrase. One way is to focus on it as if it is our joy that is our source of strength. You know, it's an incredible thing to be a Christian. We experience deep and abiding joy. When we worship God, we feel joy. When we trust God, we feel joy. To be a Christian is an incredibly joyful thing. But I think the joy of the Lord is your strength is best understood in its more literal reading. In other words, it's not our joy so much that receives the emphasis, but God's joy. It is literally the joy of the Lord that is our strength. I think that's incredibly reassuring, because if our source of strength depends on our capacity to experience joy, we know that we are going to be vulnerable. We are not always going to feel strong because, like so many other emotions, joy is fleeting. We may feel joyful at one moment and then all of a sudden it's gone. Emotions are fickle things. But when you understand the Lord's joy as being the main part of that phrase, then you know that we tap into a much bigger source of joy, a much more reliable source of strength. It is the joy of the Lord that strengthens us. How incredibly comforting that must have been for the people who heard Ezra speak those words to them. They were reminded not only of their sin and guilt, but the delight that God takes in them, how he forgives them and accepts them. It's as if God was saying to them, as he also says to us today, I know you disappoint me, and I'm glad to see that what hurts me also hurts you. But I want you to know that I love you and always will. I accept you. I forgive you. We experience that even more fully than the people of Nehemiah and Ezra's day did, because we have experienced the love and the joy of Jesus Christ. Hebrews 12 tells us that Jesus endured all of the suffering and agony of the cross. Why? for the joy that was before him. I'll have some more things to say about that on Sunday morning. I invite you to tune in at 10 o'clock as we explore that further. But for now, I want you to know that it is the Lord's joy, the Lord's delight in you, his covenantal love that is our source of strength. I want you to know that his joy is your strength. I hope that strengthens you and gives you joy today. I so look forward to exploring this further with you on Sunday morning. I encourage you to tune in and subscribe to our YouTube channel and encourage others to do that as well. In the meantime, my friends, be well and be blessed.